doing my project on Piaget's stage of development. I teach first grade, so I'm going to be mainly focusing on the pre-operational stage and where my students are going, the concrete operational stage. I mainly want to focus on that so I can see where the development is and where it is going. And since they came from kindergarten, they were also in the pre-operational stage while they were in kindergarten, so I'm wanting to look where they came from, where they are now, and where they are going next. The first stage of Piaget's stage of development is the sensory motor stage, and it is birth to 2 years. This is where they start exploring the world through their senses, through their motor skills, fine motor skills, and mostly gross motor skills, learning to crawl, learning to walk. Their reflexes, they suck on anything that's on their lips at this time. They also, if you put anything in their hands, they'll grasp at it. They go from trial and error from birth to more problem solving by the time that they're 2 years old. They think things through and they can start problem solving instead of trying something and it not working and then starting back over. This is also where object permanence starts. They begin to understand objects exist even if they cannot be seen. Like if you put something under a blanket, or if you show something to them and you put it under a blanket, they know that it's under the blanket. Pre-operational stage is ages from 2 to 7, and this is where my students were last year in kindergarten, and this is where they are now in first grade. They go by conversation, which is like sandwich cut into 4 pieces. They think that that is more than the whole sandwich. They don't understand that it's the same thing. It was just cut into 4 pieces. They also are egocentric. Everyone sees the world like they do. They don't understand that everyone else thinks differently, have different opinions. They think that everyone is just like them. They also, this is where reversibility comes in. The ability to change direction in one's thinking to return to a starting point. So if I give them a problem, like I think the book gives an example like 7 plus 5 equals 12. They don't understand that 5 plus 7 equals 12. This is the figure that was in our book diagram, and I really like the way that it lays out the conservation problems. It has the thing with the sandwiches and being cut into 4 pieces. It shows you a diagram or graphic of that. It also shows that if you take a glass of milk and pour it into a bowl, they think that it's more in a bowl than it is in the glass, even though it's the same. My students are past this part in their thinking, but they're still stuck on reversibility. Like I said before, this is how it relates to my students. My students they're past the conservation stage. They understand if you cut something into 4 pieces that it's the same as a whole sandwich. They understand that if you take something from a tall glass and pour it into a wider container, that it's still the same. They're stuck mainly on the reversibility. I have some students who are past that and some are still on it. They don't understand, especially with math, it's hard for them to understand that 7 plus 5 equals 12 and then reverse it. 5 plus 7 equals 12. They still have to count on their fingers even if the problems are sitting right beside each other. They don't understand that reversibility of it. The stage that Piaget talks about is the concrete operational stage. This is from ages 7 to 11. They form concepts and solve problems. They no longer have problems with conservation or reversibility. They begin to see things in the context of other meanings. They also can arrange things smallest to largest, which is seriation. this is where my students are going next year. They're going from 7 to 11, and I have some of the students in my class who are older than 7 who are probably in that stage of 7 to 11, but the majority of my students are still in the concrete operational stage. No, the pre-operational stage. And I'm wanting to move them up and get them to realize the reversibility of things and how to problem solve better. The stage that PJ talks about is also in this stage is transitivity, and they can draw a map from one place to another, like from their house to the school. Some of my students could probably do this, but some of them probably couldn't. Again, with the age deal, some of them are in this stage, and some of them are still stuck on pre-operational. But during this concrete operational age, they're moving from egocentric to decentered thinking. They understand that other people think differently, they have different opinions, and so they start to see that kind of stuff. And I wish my students are still stuck on that egocentric thing too, where everything is seen the way that they see it, and others, they don't understand that others have different opinions or they see things differently than they do. And I'm trying to get them to understand that as well. A stage that PJ talks about is the formal operation stage. It's 11 to adulthood, age 11 to adulthood. I think that's a very big gap. But they can start to deal with hypothetical situations and apply logic to any set of conditions. They start thinking more algebraically, those kind of things. In conclusion, I understand better now of where my students are. That's what I wanted to do with this project, was to see, just really sit down and look at the different stages and see where my students are and where they need to be next year. And I see that the majority of my students are still under the pre-operational stage, and we need to start moving them along to the concrete operational stage by the end of the year. And like I said, I have some of the students who are in that stage, but most of them, the majority of them, are not. So I hope that by the end of the year we can fix that reversibility so they can start thinking more and see that things can be reversed and still be the same, and that they're not so egocentric and don't think so much of them that everyone thinks the same way that they think. And they start seeing that other people have different imaginations, they have different opinions, they see things a lot differently than they do. So I learned a lot from this project, and I'm excited about it, and I hope that I can take this back to my classroom and understand my students more and help them learn and move on to their next development stage.